This is the first demo for the 20533C Azure Infrastructure course. Now for every module that we work on, we're going to have to do a setup Azure commandlet, and this is how we're going to do it. Now right click on PowerShell icon on the desktop, select Run ISC as administrator. This brings up the ISC environment. When the ISC loads up, there are three sections. The scripting section on the tab, the right hand side, is a quick reference for the PowerShell modules and their associated commandlets. For example, here's the Azure commandlets, and you can see these are the various commandlets belong to the Azure module. For example, add Azure account, and this is what it does. Now to prepare for each module, we'll run a setup Azure. It's going to ask which lab do you want to set up. Since this first one, we'll specify one, enter. And it's going to come up with two login screens. Now these two login screens is will sign up you to your Azure subscription. Now it happens that this first module is just to make sure we don't have any subscription certificate downloaded. We'll do this in the lab. Alright, so this is the demo 1.1. We'll show you the Azure Marketplace. So the first place we're going to take you into is called the azure.microsoft.com/marketplace. Now from this marketplace, you can discover, for example, virtual machine template that you can deploy into your Azure services. For example, if you want a Linux virtual machine, a Barracuda network appliance for firewalls, etc. You also have a Windows Server virtual machines that you can deploy. Other services that's there to support developers, to send emails, to store data, documents, to find out, for example, given a face, what is the emotion of this face? Face APIs. API apps. These are services that you can connect and get data back. So in other words, these companies that you see here are data services. They provide a non-visual code-based access to their data. And this is how you can provision an API access to these data providers. Now this is a very short list of things. The goal here is to tell you that Azure is a lot more than on-demand computing. Azure also includes a lot of things that you can use out of the box. For example, these are single sign-on applications. So you have employees who want to use these applications for their day-to-day duties and responsibilities, and you would like to offer single sign-on to these applications in order to monitor, for example, how often does these employees use these applications, and also as a way to proxy access to these applications. We'll talk about these in the AAD module. Now there are web applications that's available for hosting on Azure. Okay, so for example, the content management system called Umbraco, it's very popular. WordPress, blog site. Okay, now you can simply deploy a copy of this and start using them. And other data services. Run Microsoft Dynamics, CRMs on the Azure cloud. So this is your marketplace. Now the next item on the demos list is called the VM Depot. Now this is a set of a Microsoft hosted open source operating system with open source softwares deployed on them. For example, you can deploy a virtual machine that runs Jenkins, which is a continuous integration pipeline workflow software that helps you your development team to be able to build software more consistently and faster. and moving from source code to testing to production in a much faster manner. So you can just create a virtual machine with these software already on them, ready to go. I take a minute and go through this, and you can see that a lot of times what you need is already done. So rather than digging through hundreds of manual or documentations trying to figure out how to deploy some of these softwares, you might just have something that's ready to use. Okay, you can see there are 302 pages worth of these VMs already configured, ready to use. And also, if you find something that you might want to offer for other people to use as well, especially it's open source, you can publish your own VM. Alright, so this is the VM depot. Now the third example here is called the GitHub. Now GitHub is the de facto place where people collaborate to share code, to make source available to each other, to engage in distributed development. Okay, so the Git is the software that everyone runs on their local desktop in order to work on source code on their own workstation. And this is the place where all their changes are merged into. So here we have an Azure specific hub where you can find a lot of very interesting project that's developing in real time. This is happening today. This is happening right now. So these are not, for example, something that was updated hours ago. Okay, so we can go to Azure Quick Start templates. Now within that Azure Quick Start templates subfolder, we'll find many different projects. And mostly these projects comes with a deployment template. Now within any of these projects, this is a random one. Okay. Now you'll find a few things: an Azure deployed JSON and Azure deploy.parameters.json. Now these are the two files that gives information to this button right here that says deploy to Azure. So the Azure deploy.json describes what kind of things do we need to provision in Azure. So this describes variables, how to configure those items that we want, and also the parameters that we have to provide in order for Azure to accept this deployment request. Now we're going to look into one of these templates that deploys a Azure VM. So let's use the VM simple Windows. And let's see if we can make some sense out of this Azure deploy.json. Alright, so this Azure deploy.json contains parameters that is required to create a virtual machine resource. The DNS names for our VM, the Windows operating system version that we would like to use to deploy. Remember, this is to deploy a Windows virtual machine. Now these are variables that we will need to provide for this template to be deployed. Now finally, this is a list of resources that we want to provision using this template. So we will need a storage account. Now these informations are to be filled by the variable that we collect earlier. Public IP address is another resource that we want. A virtual network. A network interface resource. The actual virtual machine resource that we are trying to provision. So this document simply describes everything that Azure needs to know in order to give us the resource we want. So this is a description, and here is the parameters JSON. Okay, and if we click on Deploy to Azure, this will actually send the template to Azure. And if we have our Azure trial account, we can go out and actually create a VM using that information. Now, as soon as we sign in, you'll see that it's going to prompt us for the variable data, variable information. Now, once Azure receives the JSON templates, it reads the parameters file and presents the sheets for us to fill in. Now, this sheet comes directly from the parameters file. Okay, click on OK, and this will go ahead and then provision a new resource. So what we just filled in is the parameters that's required for the template, and we still need to associate it to the right subscription, which should be Azure Pass, and we want everything to be stored in a demo RG so we can easily remove them when we're done with the demo. Now choose the location, South Central US, or any of these regions that's close to us. Okay. And I'm going to pick East US. That works. All right, make sure you click on the review legal terms to make sure there is, if there's any licensing information, we can at least review. And this screen will come up. Go ahead and click on Purchase to agree to the legal terms, and go ahead and finally click on the Create. Now, one thing to note is that there's a bell icon on top of the screen where you can click on and see that the deployment started. If there is any new messages, you will see them show up in the notifications.